How's it going, YouTube? Today's video is a real treat because we finally have that last piece of the puzzle to my 650i M Sport conversion. I was sitting on the throne scrolling through Facebook Marketplace like we all do, and on my feed popped up this gem. It was an M Sport bumper for a 6 Series BMW, and it was within semi-driving distance. So right away, super ecstatic. I messaged the guy, I said, hey, when can I pick this up? No negotiations, no nothing. And arranged a time, arranged a buddy to come with me. Drove down there, took us a couple hours. Super nice guy, showed me his car. And then drove it back home, and the rest is history. Since pretty much the first day of owning my 650i, I always envied the 650i owners with the M Sport package. And so I made it a sort of goal of mine to convert mine to an M Sport. It took me 2 years to find this bumper. This was a pretty long project. This was about 2 or 3 months of hard work making this bumper a usable bumper again. When I first got it, it was in rough shape. It had previous damage from hitting curbs, and so there was a lot of repairs to be made, holes to fill, really, repaired damage as well. So fixing other people's work. I didn't like some of BMW's design choices, so I made a few modifications there as well. So with so many holes to fill, I had a bit of a conundrum on my hands. I need some sort of material to fill those holes in, because you can't just stitch them up out of nothing. And I didn't want to use any of my existing pieces. So what I did was I went to a local wrecking yard, and on their parking lot, they literally had a piece of side skirt from a BMW E90. It was run over. It was basically forgotten about, abandoned. Not only could I use this to fill in all the big holes, like those side markers that I didn't like, and some of the smaller little imperfections, we also used this as a sort of welding device. We took pieces off of the side skirt, sanded them down, and cut them into small strips, kind of like welding rods. And when it was time to add extra material to things that we were stitching together, we basically just used that as the filler material. Once the prep work had been completed and all the major holes were filled, now it was time to start sanding and shaping the bumper into its proper form. And after we did that, it was some primer with filler, and then sanding, and then primer and filler. And this process went on and on and on and on for what felt like weeks. But eventually, on a cool November evening, we finally had paint put down. And before I knew it, the clear was also put down. The bumper sat after for a couple weeks, and when I finally had enough of seeing it get pushed around and moved from one place to the other, I said enough is enough, and I decided it's time to put it on. When I got myself into this project, I knew that it wouldn't be super straightforward in terms of retrofitting the bumper. I knew that there would be all sorts of assorted brackets, panels, ducts, supports to make this whole thing fit onto the car properly. And there wasn't that much information out there for me to follow, or guides or anything like that. So I did the best I could. I looked on Real OEM, and I asked around on the forums, and my parts list wasn't off by too much, but there were a couple shortcomings. I found this because I had a couple spare parts given to me for the front end conversion when I actually purchased the parts for my rear end M Sport conversion. Unfortunately, I didn't have all the parts as one side of that donor cart was damaged. So I only had parts from the left side, and so I retrofitted what I could, but I couldn't get the right side parts in time because I never even knew that I would need them, and I needed the car done and back on the road that day because it was my ride home. While we're on this behind the scenes fun facts tangent, another fun fact is that in the background you're going to hear a polishing buffing tool, and that is the bumper actually being buffed. When you paint the bumper, or any panel for that matter, you always get some orange peel and drips and stuff like that. And we actually found that when you buff the bumper, or panel for that matter, too quickly after the paint job, it actually loses its shine pretty soon after because the paint has yet to settle. So we actually waited a couple of weeks to get the longest lasting, best result. Working on the 6 Series front bumper reminded me quite a bit of working on E90s and E92s. They have a very similar sort of bolting style with screws all around the perimeters of the bumper. You got to take off the fender liners, and then underneath you got a couple of screws in there. Underneath you got a bunch of screws and panels, and on top you got a few as well. So here I'm giving myself access to a couple screws on the bumper on the inside. The bumper is secured partially by the fender liner, so that needs to be removed anyways, and to make access to those 3 screws easier, the whole fender liner being out is definitely preferable. In this clip right here, I'm underneath the car taking off the sort of side panels next to the belly pan. Not only do we need to remove this piece to get the bumper off, we're also replacing this part with a new one. By far the hardest part of removing the front bumper would be dealing with that night vision camera. It's held in place with 3 separate things. Firstly, you got a really big screw on the top of it. This is easy. Then you have a power data line from the inside, which is very hard to reach. And closely mounted to that is a quick disconnect for your water jet to clean the lens of the camera. If you're trying this retrofit on your own, I definitely recommend 2 or even 3 people. It's very big and bulky, and particularly if you've got the night vision, you definitely want a set of eyes and hands solely dedicated to taking this off. So here we can see the adaptive cruise control sensor. It's held in with 3 rivets, 2 on the top, 1 on the bottom. On the bottom, it's basically supported by this bar that runs across from left to right side of the car. It's held in with 2 screws and a rivet on the actual sensor itself. It seems like BMW doesn't want you to be able to service this part for crash reasons, for safety reasons. It's understandable why. At this point, all I really knew is that it was a different part number for the M Sport versus the non-M Sport. I didn't really know what the key difference was, but after doing this retrofit, I can tell you that the difference between this part and the M Sport part is that the M Sport part sits further in, it doesn't stick out as much. And the same thing applies to all the rest of the parts that you're going to be retrofitting onto your 6 Series BMW. All the parts for the M Sport tend to sit further in, and any parts that are left over from your SE will interfere with you installing your M Sport bumper. These brake ducts are also routed differently. They go from the middle grille to your brakes instead of from your outer side grills to your brakes. You definitely want these ducts in place and doing their job properly, because you want your brakes cooled. If they overheat, they are basically not going to stop you anymore. Pretty scary feeling. So on the left here, we can see the SC bumper, and on the right, the M Sport bumper. The obvious difference here, as you might have expected already, is that the SE piece sticks out quite a bit more. If you're using this on a car with active cruise control, you need to rip off this extra piece. This is specifically designed to break off in case you need adaptive cruise control. But if your application does not have adaptive cruise control, then obviously don't break it off to give you better airflow. So right here we see a duct for the cooler, the water cooler on the left side of the vehicle, and this is the factory SE component. And as you can see, it doesn't really line up with the brake duct and clip in properly. And I'll watch what happens when I put the proper M Sport piece in. Okay, and now here it can reach. And behold, one of the biggest mistakes of the whole job.
Let's see that again!
So in case you missed it, what happened right there is that I used only part of the M Sport components needed to properly retrofit everything. So I retrofitted the M Sport base part of the support for the active cruise control sensor, but I retained the top support from the SE. And so that basically means that the top portion sticks out while the base is pushed in. And what that essentially does is it points the active cruise control sensor more towards the ground than expected, and it throws the whole calculation off. As a consequence, every time I drive the car right now, I get a active cruise control warning or warnings, depends on how the car is feeling that day. In case you're a part of the camp that thinks that just buying new parts and throwing it on isn't enough work and isn't, enough of a challenge for you, then BMW has you covered, because you also need to transfer over parts from your old bumper. So your fog lights, your parking sensors, and most importantly, if you got night vision, the grills. I was fortunate enough to receive grills with my M Sport bumper. They were nice and blacked out for me already, but unfortunately I couldn't use the whole thing because they weren't night vision. So what I ended up doing is I used part of the blacked out grill since I actually quite liked it so much, and I left the chrome middle piece with the night vision. So now that we're installing the front bumper to the vehicle for the first time, and every time that you do it, don't forget to plug in your harness for the parking sensors. You really want those to be plugged in because otherwise your fog lights and parking sensors will not work and you'll have to do some more work later. So here you can hear and see the struggle of putting the bumper on, particularly when you got the night vision. The bumper's heavy, it's kind of strenuous to hold for extended periods of time, and the water line in combination with the electrical connector for the night vision is very difficult to reach and tricky to install. The order is pretty important too. The electrical connector goes first, and then you should install the water line. So here you can see the 5-mile-an-hour foam bumpers are being sanded down. This is because these are the SE 5-mile-an-hour bumpers that we're trying to thin out so they can fit with the new bumper. The M Sport versions of these are pretty pricey, so I wanted to save some money there, but it bit us in the butt, and when we tried to shave it down, it sort of spews really hot, sticky styrofoam, and it's hazardous to work with, so we ended up basically abandoning that idea and running without the foam pads for now. So here you see a bit of a jump in progress. I screwed in a bunch of the screws around the bumper so that it would be supported, and I also did a couple little things like those side cameras there. And now I'm moving on to the next part, which is the base of the bumper. Now it's time to install this guy. So this lines up there, there. And we got to put either a screw hole there or go with the original clips. We'll see how this works out. Alrighty, so I got this guy in. You need to only put in 2 clips in the middle, 2 sections where you actually have the cutouts. And the rest of it, the other clips are actually a part of this piece here. They extend all the way out to here, and there's a clip built into this. And it just goes through here and sandwiches. So there's no need to reuse these clips over here that were used before. There's this rubber molding right here. It runs basically along this edge here. On the M Sport bumpers, it's a lot shorter than the standard edition bumper. So you've got, this is probably another, I would say, 5 inches longer than this one. So it basically interferes with these pieces on the sides. So I'm just gonna trim down this thing by a few inches, and I'm just gonna reuse it. I don't see why I should go and buy a new one just for this. And that's it, just a little bit of cleanup. Okay, so there you go. That's how much I had to cut off. And there is the piece right there. Unfortunately, I live in an area where front plates are required, so in she went. I reused the old one. Didn't fit perfectly, but I think it's, I mean, shape-wise, it's pretty much close enough. These clips in particular over here are a little bit under tension, but good enough. And yeah, it looks amazing. It looks fan-flippin-tastic. The way the car should have the whole time. So I'm gonna lower it, maybe put that emblem on and put the wheels on, and I'm gonna head home. And for the last part, very nice. The car has taken a step in the right direction to being that ultimate driving machine that I always wanted it to be. This was an expensive affair, but one that in my opinion was well worth it, as I don't plan on selling this car. It means so much to me, and I don't see how this could be a worthwhile upgrade for many people, because the price of these cars is not that expensive. M Sport versus SE. So if you just want an M Sport car, get yourself an M Sport from the very get-go. Most people aren't that attached to their cars, they'll just swap and trade them, so it makes a lot of sense just to go that way. Retrofitting the entire M Sport package to my car was way more expensive than just buying a whole car that has all the same features as mine, but in M Sport. In the next episode, we're going to be taking care of the issues that I encountered in this episode, starting and most importantly with the adaptive cruise control. We're going to get the bracket for the top part of it, and in the process of that, we're going to have to remove the bumper. So while we're in there, we're going to do the foam pads. We're going to do that duct as well for the oil cooler. And if we have time, and I would really like to have time, we're also going to do the headlight lenses, because they're 11 years old, they're showing their age, and the dates the car makes it look pretty bad. If you made it this far in the episode, I thank you guys for watching. Please consider maybe leaving a like or subscribing, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you.